Hello, my friends. This is my footage of the No Kings protest in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Online, I saw that there was only 2 short news videos covering our local event on YouTube, so I decided to share the small amount of footage that I filmed. The city of New Bedford actually had at least 2 protests, but possibly another one, since I heard some people talk about a third. Of the ones that I can confirm, one was on that new bridge that got built near Klasky Park, and the other one is the one that I went to at Buttonwood Park. And of course there were protests all around the country, and apparently some protested in other countries of the world as well, because this isn't just about protesting Trump, it's about protesting fascism and authoritarianism in general. Which is why on one side of my double-sided sign I wrote, "Capitalism created Trump. End capitalism now." And on the sides of that sign I had quotes from Albert Einstein and Martin Luther King which explain why we need to move away from capitalism. MLK once said, "Capitalism was built on the exploitation of black slaves and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both black and white." And Einstein said, "The real purpose of socialism is precisely to overcome and advance beyond the predatory phase of human development." On the other side of my sign is a specific policy demand regarding U.S. aid, which was shut down by the Trump administration. This side of my sign says humans are starving to death. U.S. aid saves lives. Save U.S. aid. Freeze funding for war. Fund food for Sudan. And for those who don't know, Sudan is an African country with many historical and cultural ties to Egypt, and like Egypt, it's got pyramids, temples, pharaohs, and all that stuff, but right now, it's got a civil war on its hands, and Trump chose to let the civilians of this war starve to death, along with many other people in the world in need of U.S. aid. Now, having said all that, I of course wasn't the only one whose sign had specific policies in mind. Here's a fellow protester's sign and his demands. Not all of this protester's sign can be easily read, but we'll do our best, because, hey, my sign it probably isn't the easiest thing to read either. From what I can read of the sign, it says, "Stop defunding education. End billionaire bailouts. Stop sending our taxes to bail out your despot pals and for bombing children. Tax the rich. House the houseless. Feed the poor. Raise the minimum wage. Release the Epstein files. Stop demonizing public schools to push your voucher grift. Put Jan 6ers back in prison. And go to therapy." Again, there's some other stuff written on that sign. Feel free to type it in the comments if you can manage to read it. And of course, the funny thing is, the man wrote on his sign, "TLDR, no king." So he probably wasn't expecting someone to read it out loud. But I did it anyway. And of course there were many other protesters there that day with their own policy demands. Here's another sign I photographed. It reads, "Fight Fascism. Join your local mutual aid group today. The Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, have chapters in the Berkshires, Boston, Cape Cod, Worcester, and River Valley. Keep Massachusetts home rent stabilization. Together for an inclusive Massachusetts." Now, unlike the owner of the previous sign, I actually had some time to chat with the person holding this one, and I'll share more about what I learned from her regarding the rent policy shortly. On screen now is video I took before the protest officially started. I got there early, but even then there were quite a few people around. I don't have a ton of video footage though, because most of the time I was either holding up my sign, as one does in a protest, and also some of the time I was talking to some of my fellow protesters to connect with the community, and potentially learn about other ways in which I can continue to work with our community. Because although this protest is important, there is obviously more work to be done in the fight against fascism. And on that note, I'd like to mention that I'm very much aware that some people, both on the right and left, have been saying that these protests amount to nothing. But that is objectively wrong. I can prove it because there was concrete legislative action happening at our local protest in the form of a petition to enact a law in our state of Massachusetts. The proposed law would cause a rent freeze that can help many people in our state afford the cost of living happening here. And if something like that was happening in our city, I'm sure it was happening in other cities around the country as well. On top of all that, this protest likely has and will continue to lead to more political action in the future. How you doing?
Only if you watch Fox News. I'm a terrorist. I look like a terrorist to you? By the way,
Well, they would deem I didn't deem
it's all lies. It's all lies. All of it.
down at the waterfall.
If this is your first time watching one of my videos and want to learn more about the politics of the left, I'll post some YouTube channels in the description of this video that may help you in your political education. My channel mostly focuses on the often ignored continent of Africa, the place where humankind began. I study Africa's art, history, and cultures, so if that interests you, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching.